This video is sponsored by Stepcraft. Think it, make it. I have a lot of good memories of going to Blockbusters growing up, picking out movies, seeing what's coming to theaters, grabbing a few snacks, movie nights with the family. It was awesome. I remember the rush of finding a movie I've been waiting to see actually appear in stock behind the tape or DVD box.
Wait a minute. They actually have it. More copies of new releases than ever before!
They would store the rental box right behind the real box, and you'd run up to where it was and hope the rental was actually hiding behind it. At one point, I was even allowed to rent Xbox games. What a time to be alive. The memories and nostalgia never seem to fade, and I even keep my rental card in my wallet to this day. So with that being said, I thought it'd be an awesome idea to have a giant Blockbuster sign to hang up here in my office. So let's see what we can come up with. All right, so getting started on the digital files needed for this, I downloaded a vector file of the logo and then simplified the torn edge on the right. After that, I just needed to cut this into manageable pieces. I guess essentially what I'm trying to achieve is multiple stacks of 3/4 inch MDF slices that get stacked together to give it more depth and a place to house the lighting inside. And to maximize the maximum cutting area of the D840, which is a CNC I'm going to be using, I'm going to utilize its entire cut bed and make this sign as large as possible while only needing a single sheet of MDF. The D840 is designed to handle quarter sheets, so 24 inches by 48 inches fit right on top without needing to be trimmed down, making it super handy, especially since most stores like Lowe's and Home Depot already carry quarter sheets. Maximizing to this size though means I'll need to flush trim the plexiglass surface instead of cutting it on the CNC, which I didn't realize until later, but it won't be a problem, and you'll see later what I did to solve this. Once that's done, I'm ready to go shopping, and unfortunately, inflation really took a toll on materials. A quarter sheet is now $30, which is just insane. I remember paying $9 for this same piece years ago, but only need one, so it's not too bad in this case. I also grabbed a 1/4 inch thin piece at the same dimension for the back panel, which you'll see later on. Now, you don't technically need a CNC for this project, but it does make things a lot easier. I love how clean and precise the Stepcraft machine cuts, and learning how to use it was significantly easier than I expected. So pleasantly surprised there, but it really opened the door for new and exciting projects that I cannot wait to work on this year. I have a link in the description for everything I used, including the CNC, as you know, any bits. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'd be happy to help out. Even if you're interested in me cutting a single layer of this project up and sending it to you so you can use a flush trim router bit to sort of replicate and layer it up like I'm doing, yeah, just let me know. I'd be happy to help out. You can also cut a single layer out with a jigsaw or a table saw, refine it, and then trace it with a flush trim router. Just the same, so whatever you prefer. I also realized that the L shapes in this could have just been full width boards connected in the corner, but you know, if I ever make this again, I'll know what to do. But yeah, everything is looking pretty good, and this worked out really well. I'm pleasantly surprised. So let's move on. So once the cutting is done, I can get started on trimming the tabs off. I include these because if the piece wasn't fully attached, it could jump out and mess up the cut or the quality, or potentially break the router bit. I'm not interested in finding that out, so always good to leave these tabs in. Next up are the letters, and unfortunately, somehow I messed this up. I'm not really sure what happened. The MDF is 3/4 inches thick, but the bit itself is, I don't think it was meant to cut that thickness. I think it's only set for 1/2 inch maybe. Even though the bit is really long, the cutting potential I think is not all the way through 3/4 inch. So it jammed up, and the machine I guess miscut some of the letters. That's okay though, because you know, everything was unharmed, and I allotted extra material just in case such occasion would happen. So I put back the larger bit to do the letters, which left a slightly different interior corner than the others, but it's all good. Once it was painted and everything, you know, everything just it looked fine. So I'm moving on again. Next up is sanding off the tabs and cleaning up any imperfections. I should probably mention that you definitely need to wear a mask or do this outside, or both if possible. MDF dust, or really any dust, is just not good. So take care of your lungs, be careful, do it properly. But now it's time to glue the pieces together, which will give you a good look at what I was talking about earlier in terms of stacking up the pieces. To attach them all, I just used wood glue and brad nails. Again, be very careful. Using a nailer is a little tricky with thin pieces like this because a few nails liked to pop out of the side when they would be driven in. But I made sure to hold the pieces in a safe spot because I knew this was going to happen. So just be overly cautious. Make sure you hold it so that the nail isn't going to pop out and you get a brad nail into the finger, which is no fun at all. But anyways, once the glue dried, I took the pieces back out to the sander to give them another cleanup. It was about here I realized I really should have made these sides a lot thicker. I think I only ended up with around 1/2 inch of material to work with, which is definitely not enough. I really wanted to attach everything with pocket holes, but ultimately I wasn't able to even do that. So I resorted to just wood and clamping, which for me, for this, is just fine, especially because it's just wall art. But if this is for, if I were to sell this or ship it or anything, I would really want these walls to be thicker just in case it falls or it gets damaged during shipping. Something to make it just a little stronger. But for now, since it's for me, I don't mind. This is fine. Once the glue dried though, it was time to fill in any imperfections. Where the larger piece is connected, I wanted to try and get super glue in there for a little more structural insurance. I just mixed it up with some of the sawdust and stuffed it in there. This is a good method for any missing chunks as well. I also used a small piece of parchment paper just to help flatten it out and, without it getting stuck to my fingers. After that, it's time for another quick sanding and then giving it a layer of drywall mud to fill in the larger imperfections and level everything out. Again, if this is for a client or somebody bought this and I was trying to sell this, I would not use drywall mud. I would probably use Bondo because it's really strong, but I don't have any Bondo on hand. And I'm just doing this for myself, so this is just fine. I also did this too early as I have another layer to attach, but it's all good. After that though, another bit of sanding. So this is where I ran into more issues due to the thinness of the wall. It's also what I was talking about earlier with the plexiglass. There was supposed to be a rabbet cut around the perimeter so I can just kind of drop the plexiglass sheet in and then encapsulate it with another layer of MDF. But unfortunately, I couldn't find a router bit like this at the correct size. I could have gotten a custom one made, but I'm not looking at it to spend that kind of money. That would have been ridiculous. So instead of cutting a ledge, I'm just going to glue the plexiglass right onto the top, flush trim it with a brand new flush trim router bit that's made for acrylic, and then place the remaining ledge right on top of it. Not the best way of doing it, but since it's simple wall art and it's just for me, I think it's going to be just fine. Next up is shopping, and oh my gosh, what happened to the price of acrylic? Another unfortunate victim of inflation, apparently. There's no way I was interested in paying $90 for a small sheet of plexiglass, so I went shopping around to see what else I could find, and as luck would have it, a surplus store nearby actually had a broken piece set out for $20, and it was just big enough so I came home victorious. I'm so excited that I got a piece of acrylic at like for $20. That definitely made me happy. I really wish it wasn't that expensive, but it's all good. To attach this, I started by roughing up the area that will be hit with glue, so it bonds a lot better. Really smooth surfaces have a hard time bonding with glue for some reason, but just roughing it up a little bit helps a lot. Typical me though, I roughed up the wrong side. They both need to be treated this way, but I was hoping to leave the protective film on one side for as long as possible. That did not work out though, but it's all good. I used copious amounts of super glue to do this. I don't use any activation spray to set it because I really like the few seconds of adjustments you get out of just letting it dry naturally. Once it's dry though, I took it out back, covered parts of it with tape to protect it, and then used a flush trim bit to trim off the extra. Be really careful with this because not all flush trim bits are meant for acrylic. Sometimes they can melt or even shatter, things like this. Now I can start placing the final layer on, and finally it's actually starting to look like something. Once all the remaining pieces are in place, I mask the rest of the surface to make sure it doesn't get scratched up or marked with paint. Now it's time to work on the back, and instead of doing something basic or plain, I wanted to get a little innovative, starting with the mounting holes. I want them to be exactly 24 inches apart, or just a nice even number that I can easily remember, to make hanging it a little easier. When I go to drive in the screws, I know, okay, they just need to be level at 24 inches apart. On top of that, let's add in a fun slogan from the era. I don't think it was their motto, but it certainly was a part of the ritual of renting VHS tapes and returning them. It's just rude to return a tape without rewinding it. Like, just, be kind, rewind. Other than that, there was one other feature I wanted to add in, and that is a tilt that the original logo had. I don't know what angle or what amount this tilt is. I want to mimic how the logo was presented, essentially. So to do this, I downloaded their logo at the correct tilt and then rotated my design except for the mounting holes. Doing this will give me what I thought would be a brand accurate presentation, but if you aren't slightly dyslexic like I am, you will immediately see the issue with this. I just could not wrap my tiny brain around why this would not work, even after seeing my mistake, but here's the process of making the rear panel.
Why isn't it possible? It's just not. Why not, you stupid?
A small design is added to the back of the projects I work on. It has the channel logo and a place for my signature. Just adds a little bit of professionalism to everything, but yeah, it looks pretty awesome. So now it's time to discover what went wrong. Taking another closer look at this for probably the 100th time, I rotated the logo correctly, but I did it with the intention of mounting it front facing, but the insignia goes on the back, which means it should have been reversed. So back to the cutting bed to correct this issue. I just flipped the mounting holes in V Carve, re-exported and cut the existing back panel instead of starting over and buying a new piece. Patching it would be pretty easy, less costly and time consuming, but once again, I ended up reversing this too. I like having a clearance of 0.02 inches, but I accidentally expanded it by 0.02 inches on the first cut. And when I went to go make another cut, I set it back to 0.02, but that just reversed it to an exact fit of the hole. You can tell I'm new at this, but the CNC is doing a fantastic job. I'm the problem here, but not to be dismayed. A hammer ended up being exactly what I needed to fix this issue here. So I just, tapped those into place and added a little super glue, sanded it, and it just looks perfect, like it never happened. Once this is painted, it's going to be just fine. Now it's time for the final cleanup. Again, I'm using drywall mud here. If you have Bondo, that is a much better option. It is a little pricier, so beware. Also, now's a good time to mention if you want to keep up with my other projects. I post a lot on Instagram as well. My handle is Bretts_media. I try to post as much as possible, but can't always update every day. But, I'm around. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments or reach out on Instagram. I'm always around. I'm always busy making something that can't always make it over here to this channel as well. So stop on by and see what I'm up to. Anyways, now that the final sanding is complete, I can move on to painting. If you've ever worked with MDF, you'll likely know how annoying it is to spray paint. You have to treat it prior to spray painting, otherwise it's like a sponge of inconsistency. It does not take spray paint well. I really don't like it, but I made sure to use a filler primer prior to spraying this with the yellow paint, but ultimately even that didn't work out so well. The plexiglass looks really nice though, but that got messed up. I'll show that later on. It's just, painting was a pain. I'll say that. Not wanting to waste any more money on spray paint, I decided to go with a high-endurance semi-gloss latex house paint from Lowe's or Home Depot. I can't remember which one. I always keep my Blockbuster card on me, you know, just in case. So color matching was easy. Also, fun tip, if you're planning on painting a large object on a like your table or something, save your bottle caps. I found that if you drive a screw through the bottom of a few of them, you can kind of use them as stilts, I guess. It helps keep it off the table while you paint, just so you're not, you know, getting paint all over the surface and then missing some of the corners, I guess. Once it was all done though, and the paint was dry, I was actually really excited about the results. It actually looked pretty good. The masking tape wasn't a perfect seal, but yeah, a little rubbing alcohol just cleans up the little imperfections just fine. Fast forwarding a little to the light I'll be using for the inside of this. I'll show how I made it later, but I wanted to show you first why the spray paint was a terrible idea for the acrylic. So this light is extremely bright, like really bright. However, the paint looks awful and doesn't shine through at all. The paint was just a little too thick, way too inconsistent. It does have a dim glow, but regardless of brightness, the spray paint, it's got to go. This was a pretty big setback for this project, and I ended up shelving it for, I think, a couple months to work on other things while toying around with the notion that I might be starting over from scratch, or at least just cutting it where the plexiglass is and trying to salvage the body and the rim. But while I was working on my kitchen, I had to strip the paint off of the inside of the windows because I fogged them, and I realized this might also work for the acrylic. I don't know if it was gonna like eat away at the polymers within the glass, but at this point, I really had come to terms with probably starting over. So what would the harm be? So I spread a bunch over the paint where the plexiglass is, and I leveled it off and just let it sit for a few hours. And wouldn't you know it, it actually kind of worked. It did leave a weird etching that I wasn't able to fix, but since that side is getting painted, the spray paint essentially will fill in those micro abrasions and make it look smooth again. At least that's my hope. And speaking of which, it's time to try something new. I found this glass tinting spray and thought I'd give it a go. It looks awesome, but I need it to also fog the glass so you can't see the inside of the box. To do that, after tinting it, I used an entire can of fogging spray, and that seemed to do the trick. But it wasn't perfect. Like up close, you can see there's still a few imperfections, but it looks really good if you stand like a few feet away from it, and like you really have to look for the imperfections. So I'm just going with it. Now it's time to work on these letters. I did these the same time as the shell, so I wasted a can of spray paint on these before trying a different paint method. The painting always brings out little fibers as well, which is pretty annoying, but that's MDF for you. I just had to hand sand all the little nooks and crannies. To give them another coat of paint, I glued them to sticks so I can spin them around to get all the angles. This worked out pretty well, however, I forgot to check the weather, and unfortunately, they got soaked. There was not a cloud in sight when I started painting these, and then when I went out a few hours later, yeah, rain. But that's Pennsylvania for you. This was around the same time as the plexiglass paint issue, so I just put everything inside for a while, and that actually did the trick. Once they fully dried, the only thing that I needed to do was sand away some of the chipping paint. So I thanked my lucky stars and got to work painting them all the same yellow with the same house paint. I didn't film the back panel getting painted, but as you can see, the patch is 100% covered and unnoticeable. Super happy with how it turned out. Now it's time to seal it all in with a few coats of spray-on polyurethane to give it even more gloss and protection. This is where I was supposed to sign it, but I completely forgot. So the signature sits above the clear coat, which is no good. I needed to go back and spray it with another coat off camera as soon as I realized that. I also wasn't planning on doing this, but I couldn't help myself. I had to get out the blue paint from another project, and I wanted to highlight the letters on the back to really set it off. Since it was coated in a glossy finish, I was able to wipe away excess and just kind of pour in the paint, and it was really easy, but it made it look a lot more professional. And you know, it is cheap paint, so it needs to get sealed in as well. Now it's time for my favorite part, the electrical. I love old signage, especially the vintage ones that use like neon and fluorescent. A lot of those signs also have a pull string switch too, so I really wanted to incorporate something like that. I also didn't want to have a cord that was constantly hanging out of the bottom. It gets annoying. It makes it weird to transport. So that was another issue that I wanted to try to find a way to mitigate. Getting started though, I knew I was going to be using tube lights to mimic fluorescent tubes, so I got a jump start on covering the back with reflective tape just to help get the light concentrated, and then gluing in place the 3 tubes. Again, links in the description for everything I used. The wire that leads into the shell, I thought would look pretty cool if it was like wrapped with paracord or some sort of blue or yellow cordage. That, just like a lot of other things, just did not end up working out too well. I tried a few different types of paracord without any luck. And not giving up though, I found a pre-wrapped wire online that was nice dark blue, so away with the old and in with the new. The way I went about having a temporary power supply is by wiring up the male end of a barrel connector to the end of this fabric cable. This is my big guy hanging out with me while I work. His name is Bill. He's always on the hunt for some snacks. Now it's time to tap into the case for a place to run the switch and female end of the barrel connector. Unfortunately, I kind of messed this up. I drilled a hole a little too big for the switch, and it just looks kind of goofy, but it still serves its purpose just fine. Sorry this is blurry, my camera is just old. Next up is screwing in the other end of the barrel connector into the case, making sure I don't scratch the new paint. Another thing I wanted to do is to make it so you can completely disconnect the rear shell if needed. Having the wiring run through the shell and into the back panel means I need a quick disconnect for this. Luckily enough, not only did I have some on hand, but I also had some in blue and yellow, which fit the color scheme perfectly. So that worked out really nicely. Please don't judge me on my soldering. I'm using lead-free solder, and for whatever reason, it's spreading about as nicely as cold butter on toasted bread. I can't believe I wrote that. I forgot about that. Here's the basic wire diagram I made up for this. Very easy, straightforward. Just keep track of your positives and negatives, and it'll be just fine. But regardless, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to help. Now that wiring is complete, it's time to place all the screws back in their places and start adding the letters. I'm using hot glue here, as you can see, but I don't anticipate this being a permanent solution. For now, it's just fine for me. This is fine. If any fall off, I can just glue it back on. But if I were to sell this, I would pull the letters off, peel the hot glue, etch the acrylic, and use super glue to attach the letters, just like I did the outer ring. And before putting this on the wall, I wanted to add one more little feature, which are these rubber stick-on feet that will keep it from fusing to the wall when it's hung on the wall for a long period of time. I don't know, for whatever reason, house paint just loves to do that. If you've run into the same issue, you know how annoying that is. So yeah, But anyways, there we have it, the final product. For whatever reason, I'm doing this with my phone, and the tube lighting is way more prominent on the camera. I think it's because of the HDR feature, but in person, the light is diffused really nicely, and it just looks awesome. Again, not perfect, but it feeds to that vintage fluorescent effect that I was going for, vintage sign effect, whatever you want to call it. I really love how this turned out, and it's definitely one of my favorite projects, as Blockbuster themselves were always one of my favorite parts of Friday night growing up and perusing the aisles looking for things to watch. Yeah, just nostalgia at its finest. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun making, even though there was a lot of frustrating parts. There's no problem in redoing as long as you don't give up. That's my mentality. So, you know, learned a lot, and now I'm sharing it with you, making sure you guys don't make the same mistakes. So let me know in the comments if you have any questions at all. I'd be happy to help. But yeah, like, subscribe, comment, share. It really helps get these videos mixed into the algorithm. Thank you, Stepcraft, for the CNC. The D840 is incredible. But yeah, until next time, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later.